previous session, Dr. Ostobar told you about the disease and disease transmission. Yes?
Yes.
But we want to know the extent of a disease in our community. How can we explain the occurrence of a new disease or the loading of a disease in the current situation? We want to have some tools. Yes?
Yes.
For example, meter is a tool to measure the height of somebody. Or, for example,
Liter.
okay, yes, or some any other vehicle that are available to measure something.
Second time.
Yes, but for measuring occurrence of disease, we should have some tools to explain the occurrence of disease. Okay, so it is the main objectives of this session. Measures of frequency, ratio, proportion, and rate. These three are three different tools for measuring some accidents. These are such as meter. Okay? What is the difference between these three? Do you know?
Proportion is like a percentage, and the difference between ratio and rate is in the both ratios and rate there is numerator as well as denominator. In ratio, the numerator is not the part of denominator, but in rate, the numerator is a part of denominator.
Very good. Very good. Is it clear? We will explain again. For these three measures, we have numerator and the denominator. Yes? What does it mean? If I ask you about the number of students in the class, you may respond, for example, we are 20 in this class. And again, I will ask you, how many of you are female? Okay? For example, 5. It means 5 out of 20 are female. So we have two numbers, numerator and the denominator. Okay?
Yes.
In ratio, the numerator here above this fraction and denominator are not the same. It means that the numerator is not a part of the denominator. Men are separated from women.
So,
Yes?
yes.
It is a kind of ratio. The ratio of female to male is, for example, 5 to 2. It means 2.5 per 1 divided by 1. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So you can translate it in an easier form. For example, if you divide 2.5 and 1, this is 5 divided by 2. If you divided both of them to 2, it would be 2.5 by 1. Okay? What is the properties and uses of ratios? How can we use it? For example, in a medical setting, you may want to explain the number of hospitals per population. You may say that, for example, per 1,000 population, we have one hospital, for example. The ratio of hospitals per individual. Hospital is a center in patients or population are human. So, numerator and denominator are not the same. Sometimes they are totally different, such as hospitals and human. Sometimes both of them are, for example, human, but female and male. Okay? If I ask you, how many, what does it mean? You may use this measure, for example, to explain something and to compare some different ratios in different population. We will explain in the next slides.
Okay.
Okay?
Ma'am, for example, you give the example apple. If you say that, for example, there are 30 apples. If we say the ratio of a rotten apple and fresh apple, it will be the ratio or not?
Ratio of what to what?
Rotten apple and a fresh apple.
Yes. It could be. Because those are not subgroups of each other. Yes? But if I ask you, how many fruit do you have right now? You say, for example, 30. And I ask you, how many of them are apples? How many of them? You say that, for example, 20. It means that 20 out of 30
Or apples.
are apples. Apples are a subset of all fruits.
Exactly.
It is a kind of proportion.
Exactly.
These are different, okay? Ratio is not, numerator is not a subset of denominator, but in a proportion, numerator is a subgroup of denominator. Read this example.
Still 4% of 50 gains. Straight on.
500 divided by 4 million. Yes? It means 1.30 per person. But it doesn't mean. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
It doesn't mean I can multiply these number by 10 powered by n. For example, if we multiply these number by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it means that 125 per million. Yes?
Got it.
It is a kind of transformation. Okay? Or 1.25 per 10,000 if we multiply it by 10 powered 4. Powered by 4.
Got it.
But 1.25 clinic doesn't make sense because we don't have 1/4 of clinic. Yes? So we can translate it again. If we divide it by 1.25, it could be 1, and 10,000 divided by 1.25 would be 8,000. It means that per every 8,000 population we have one clinic. So these are the different types of transformation and reporting the numbers. Okay? If you have any question, please ask. What about proportion? I told you that if you divide, for example, the number of female with red clothes to all female, it is a kind of proportion. Why? Because the numerator is a subset of the numerator. Okay? It means that 50% of our female were in red. Okay? Could you please read this example? What is the question?
Proportion.
So please tell me just the question, not the answer right now. What is the question?
The proportion of men which is having the disease, actual
Uh-huh.
disease in the total number of men population.
Okay. We have here diabetic men, non-diabetic men, diabetic women, and non-diabetic women. Yes? Here.
The proportion of men.
Calculate the proportion of men who were diabetics. So, the denominator is men,
Total number of men.
total number of men. The numerator is men who have diabetes. Okay?
5.65. 5.65%.
So, not final answer. Please
Step by
say
step.
the day.
189 divided by total number of men, which is 189 plus 3151.
How
189.
many men do we have?
3340.
These are men.
Yes.
189. These are men. So if we add these two numbers, it is the total number of men in our question. Who are diabetics? These are.
Only 189.
So 189 divided by the total number of men multiplied by 100 would be 5.66. It means nearly 6% of men in our study are diabetics. Okay? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So, in epidemiology, proportions are used most often as descriptive measures because when you want to describe, for example, how what proportion of medical students in Kish, for example, are from Arabic countries. It means that you should divide the medical students from Arabic countries divided by
Total number of students.
all medical students. Okay? But if I ask you about the medical students from Arabic countries compared to medical students from, for example, non-Arabic countries,
This
it
is ratio.
is a kind of ratio. Okay.
Ratio.
How about rate? Rate is a kind of proportion. So it is clear that numerator is a subset of denominator
Denominator.
because it is a kind of proportion to which time has been added. What does it mean? It means, for example, number of cases or events occurring during a given time period divided by population at risk during the same time period. I ask you, what proportion of medical students have been diseased during the last year? I explained about a time. I explained about a proportion that has been occurred during a specific period of time. So it could be rate. Rate is a kind of proportion, but since you have time inside these measure,
Parameters.
it is a kind of
Rate.
speedy
Exactly.
speed, yes? Because for example, 10 during 10%, for example, during 6 months is different from 10% during 2 months. Yes? So we will use these measures during our courses of epidemiology. These three are so important. We have two measures of morbidity: incidence and prevalence. Do you know what does it mean? Have you ever heard about incidence and prevalence or not? Yes? Could you please tell us what does it mean, incidence?
Incidence refers to, for example, by accident, if we will fetch a sort of disease or anything. Prevalence refers to its time period, how much time it remains there, which gives us the rate of the morbidity, or how much time it will prevail. It will be there in the world.
Prevalence tells us the severity of disease.
Severity, prevalence.
Yes.
Are you sure? We will review. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Incidence is defined as the number of new cases of a disease that occur during a specified period of time. So, it is a kind of rate.
Rate, exactly.
Yes?
Yes.
In a population at risk for developing the disease. You are at risk for developing common cold. But males are not at risk for developing ovarian cancer. So, to calculate incidence, the denominator are number of persons who are at risk of developing the disease during the period of time. So, for prostate cancer, we can put just the number of men
Males.
in the denominator.
Exactly.
For ovarian cancer, just put the number of female who have ovary. If they have been ovarectomy, they are not at risk for ovarian cancer as well. Okay?
Got it.
So, please be cautious. If I ask you about the incidence, you should calculate the number of at-risk population in the denominator. Okay? What does the statement, the incidence of hepatitis B in the European Union is 3.5 per 100,000 mean? What does it mean? It means that during, for example, a specific period of time, for example, 1 year, per 100,000 person, 3.5 new cases are occurred. Okay?
Yes.
So incidence means new cases. We have 10
Raised to
covered by N, okay? For rare diseases, we may increase the N For example, per 1 million, we have 1 new case. For common diseases, we decrease the n. For example, per 1,000, we have blah blah. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
It is the difference between rare and common disease. Because the incidence is a measure of events transition from a non-disease to a disease, high-risk population. The incidence can be a measure of risk. Yes? Because it shows us the risk of being infected, the risk of being diseased. If I am diabetic, okay, I am diabetic, I cannot be a diabetic patient again. So, if we want to calculate the risk of being diabetes, I will never put my name in the denominator. But for non-diseased population, they can be diabetic, for example, during a period of time. They are at risk, so incidence is a kind of risk measure.
Got it.
Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Please read. What does it mean? Could you translate it for me?
First point is clear. The people who are of the risk, in the risk of the disease only, they should be divided upon the numerator.
Uh-huh. To calculate the incidence, to find the risk, we should follow patient, we should follow population.
You told them.
Because we should find the new cases. Yes? Sometimes people at risk observe throughout a defined time period. We do not have any loss to follow up. But sometimes we have loss to follow up. How can we find the differences and what does this sentence mean? Please let us review some examples to be clarified. In an outbreak of gastroenteritis among attendees of a corporate picnic, 99 persons ate potato salad, 3 of whom developed gastroenteritis. Calculate the risk of illness,
Incident.
it means incidence, among persons who ate potato salad. If I didn't tell it, it should be hidden, but you can find that risk
Yeah.
is just among person who ate potato
Potato
salad
salad.
because the other
Good to go.
guests were not at risk because they didn't. Okay? 3 persons who ate potato salad and developed gastroenteritis are the numerator. The numerator or 99 persons who ate potato salad. It means 30%.
Yes, ma'am.
It is a kind of food-specific attack rate because it is related to food, eating a specific kind of food. Okay? But this period is short. You can follow all persons and check who are diseased and who are not. Yes? But I will ask you another question. a period of 2 years. Here, study is long. Study duration is long. Recruited a total of 6 patients. It is just a hypothetical example, just to find the meaning, okay? 3 deaths were observed. What is the survival up to 2 years? Survival. I mean, no deaths.
3%.
How many? Of 6 patients, 3 deaths were observed.
50%.
It means 3 probably are alive.
50%.
3 divided by
3.6
6
into 100.
means 50%. Okay? Is it right?
Yes.
But I told you just the number of deaths. If I tell you additional information about the other 3, 2 patients were not observed for the entire 2 years, and 1 survived 2 years. It is additional information. What is the survival in this example, in this scenario?
25%. 25%.
25. How can you calculate it?
Because that time we only have 4 patients there for the judgment. So we can just 3 divided by 4, which is 75.
4?
3 divided by 4 into 100. we
Why
see.
4? We have 6.
Because 2 are not there.
But they were at the beginning. You remove them from the entire study.
So we only have to deal with the study, what we are studying. So there only we can see the patients who recovered were like who survived. They were it was only 1, and deaths were 3.
Okay. Please see here. I show you all these 6 individuals here. This is 2 years. Okay? We have a person ID 1 who survived up to end of study. These are 3 deaths. These are 2 who have been missed. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
We follow person number 2 for 6 months and number 4 for 15 months. But after 15 months,
Disappeared.
he disappeared. Yes. We don't know what is
Dear
his
fate.
final
Fate.
destination. Yes. If he survived or if dead. If I ask you about 2 assumptions, assume both censored individuals survived up to 2 years. Survival up to 2 years would be 3
50%.
divided by 6 means 50%. The other assumption is both censored died before 2 years. It means just 1 survived up to 2. The survival would be 1 divided by 6 means
17%.
17%. But what is the correct answer? We don't know. The correct survival rate is 50%. Yes? You told us that you remove those two sensors from the beginning
Yes, ma'am.
and calculate the denominator as 4.
Exactly.
But what is these advantages of this solution? In this example, 15 months and 6 months, you s- you
Eliminate.
no, you put your force and energy and money to follow them for these 21 months. But removing them from the denominator waste your energy, waste your time, waste your money. So it is not a good solution to remove, for example, those population. Consider a situation in which you have 1,000 population and you follow them, for example, for 5 years. But during these 5 years, 500 have been lost. If you remove all of those population, you waste your money, you waste your time. So we should find another solution for this kind of situation in which we have lost to follow up. In reality, in studies in which we follow participants, we have lost to follow up.
Khana, what happened to the please do previous slide?
The previous slide.
2 and 4th, what happened? They haven't died, okay, but we cannot say either they will die in 12 month or 10 month. What happened to them?
10 months or 4 months of date of death is not important for us.
Then
We just want to
yeah,
know if at the end of a study they are alive or not.
yeah,
Okay? We know that
one
he
is alive, yeah,
alive. We know that
These
these
are dead.
3
dead,
dead,
okay,
but we don't know about them. Because, for example, when we call them to find their situation, they didn't ask us. For example, they migrate to other city or something like that. So, we don't know what is their situation, if they are alive or not. So, we don't know if we want to calculate the incidence rate of, for example, deaths. We don't know if they are
alive.
in the numerator or not, because we don't know their events, their situation of happenings and events. Okay? So, what is the solution? We found that there is a need to take into account losses to follow up. Yes? How? We can calculate the number of months that we have followed those population. Please see this example. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals. These are the number of years that we have followed these individuals. These 2
Time
are diseased
onset
Death.
time.
patients. For example, disease, for example, is diabetes, for example. But these 3 are not diseased. We can calculate the number of years that we are followed these population. 5 years, 5 years, 10 years, 8 years, and 4 years. Total 32
2 years.
2 years.
If we follow 32 years, we have 2 accidents. It is a kind of incidence, but it is totally different from the previous one. In the previous type, I told you we have, for example, 5. Among these 5, we have 2 accidents. That was a kind of proportion because the denominator was the number of total participants and the numerator was the number of incidents, the number of events. But
Then-
here, the numerator is not the number of patients. It is just the number of total years that they have been at risk.
I mean, what do you mean by time at risk?
The number of years that we are follow the population. For example, please assume that all of you are a study population.
Yes.
We will want to find, for example, the incidence rate of, for example,
Conjunctivitis. For example, conjunctivitis.
wearing a glass, for example, among you. You are not at risk because you are wearing a glass right now, you and you. So we remove both of you and you 3 from the beginning. Okay? We will follow the other students, for example, for 3 years. Okay? How many students do we have here? For example, 20. I will follow you at the end of first year and ask you about if you wear a glass right now or not. If yes, you are, for example, a case in the numerator. If not, you are not the case. Okay?
Got it.
But at the end of the second year, I will call you again to follow about the event. But 3 of you have moved to another city and I cannot ask you about the current situation, about wearing a glass or not. So these 3 are lost to follow up.
Mhm.
But you were 20 at first. I will follow all of you at the end of year 1. So 20 for 1 year, it means 20 years. It means I followed for 20 years. Why? Because you are 20 and you were followed for 1 year. Okay?
Got it.
But during the second year, 3 of you left. 17 for another 1 year. But these 3 have moved. Okay? So, person A followed for 5 years. Person B followed for 5 years. Person C followed for 10 years. Because in all 10 years, he was available and asked me about and got information to me about his current
Wearing of glass.
situation. Okay, so these are the number of follow-up for 32
2 years.
years. Among these number of follow-up, I had just 2 events. Okay, so 2 divided by 32 year. Year. It means year of follow-up. If I follow you for 37 years of follow-up, 20 of you for 1 year, 17 of you for the second year, it means 37. For example, 2 of you will wear a glass. 2 divided by 37.
Years.
It is a kind of solution for not removing loss to follow-up from the denominator. Why? Because I tell you that if you follow, for example, one person for at least 1 year, you can calculate him in the denominator. Why? Because up to that year, you know the situation and you know that he or she is not diseased. Why do you want to remove them, for example, from the denominator and waste your time, waste your money? Okay?
Got it.
But please think about it. Is it a kind of rate?
No,
Is it a kind of proportion?
that's my question.
No, it is not. Because denominator is a kind of person time.
It's not a specific time period.
Yes,
So,
but the numerator is a kind of person who are diseased. Okay? But it is so important, and if you review the articles, you can find these kind of incidents. It is wrongly named as incidence rate, but it is not a kind of rate. Okay? But since it is written in the text, we have to know it as incidence rate, but we right now know that it is totally different by a nature of rate. Okay? The real name of this kind of incidence is incidence density. So, we have 2 kinds of incidence. Incidence proportion or incidence cumulative incidence. These 2 names are the same. When we don't have loss to follow, such as this example. We didn't have loss to follow. We had 99 person at risk, and we had, for example, 30 diseased. It is a kind of cumulative incidence
Proportion.
or incidence proportion.
But,
But
we had used, the word rate here. Even you told about here. It
Yes,
is-
I told you that it is a kind of wrong annotation.
Not about that. I'm saying about this example.
Yes.
Food specific attack.
It is right. Why?
Because we are not framing the time here. So
Yes, we have time, but the time is very short.
corporate picnic.
Time, yes, during the picnic. For example, 2 hours.
Got it.
Sometimes time is short, sometimes time is, for example, year, sometimes 10 year or something like that. Okay? But when we have loss to follow, we will use incidence density or person time incidence. Okay? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
the number of cases divided by the number of susceptible exposed, which is really the same as the definition of risk. Please see this table. Number of children exposed to a sibling with the disease for measles, for chickenpox, and for mumps. Number who fell ill: 201, 172, and 82. If I ask you about the incidence proportion of, for example, measles, you can tell that among those children who have exposed, these are the number of events. 201 divided by 251. Okay?
Nice one.
Or for chickenpox or for mumps. It is a kind of
Proportion.
incidence proportion or incidence cumulative incidence, okay, or a kind of attack rate. Why? Because the time is very short, it could be a kind of attack. For diabetes, we cannot say attack rate. But for infectious disease, the time is short and we can use attack rate for infectious diseases instead of incidence rate. Okay?
Infectious disease we can use. Like, is it the time period up to which the symptoms come in our body?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes, because for example, the time to be disease is so short.
Okay.
When I expose, for example, to a patient with influenza, during, for example, a couple of days, I will be diseased. So the time of follow-up is so short. But how about prevalence? Prevalence.
The disease which
Incidence was the number of new
disease.
cases. But prevalence are the number of,
Disease which persist in the
very
society.
good, old and newly diagnosed. For example, if I told you the prevalence of, for example, diabetes in medical students is 10%, it means that among 100 medical students, 10 have the disease. It doesn't mean that they are newly diagnosed or, for example, diagnosed from, for example, 5 years ago. So, for prevalence, we have the number of people who have that disease at a specific time. There is a formula that shows us the relation between prevalence and incidence. What is D?
Duration.
It is duration of the disease, exactly. So, if a disease has a longer duration, the prevalence of disease can be increased. If diabetes, for example, have good treatment and the patients survived higher compared, for example, to the previous years, the number of diabetics would be increased in our population. Yes?
No.
Because they survived more and the number of population with diabetes would be increased. On the other hand, if we have increased risk, increased incidence, the prevalence might be higher, might be increased. Yes? Okay?
Here,
Okay?
yes.
No? Okay. If I tell you that we have two communities, community 1, the incidence of, for example, diabetes is 4%. And in the other community, the incidence is 10%. Okay? And the survival of diabetes are the same in these two communities. After 3 years, the number of diabetic person in community B is higher. Why? Because annually 10% of population are adding to the basket of diabetic population. Yes? So the number of population with diabetes are increased when the incidence rate is increased. On the other hand,
But
please,
under the constant duration, right?
under
the same duration.
okay, very good. Please assume another situation in which the incidence rates are the same, 10 and 10. But here, patients survived much more time because the treatment is better. After 5 years, the number of diabetics in this community are higher. Why? Because although the incidence rates were the same, but in this community, diabetic patients survived, and the total number of population with diabetes are increased. So, both incidence and duration have the same relation with prevalence. Okay? It means that we cannot compare the prevalence of a disease in two communities or in a community, for example, in a previous time with this time, just by comparing the number of prevalence. Why? Because by better treatment, the number of population with that disease might be increased. It is not at that point. Sometimes it is a good point. It shows us the better treatment for that community. So these important points should be taken into consideration when you want to compare two diseases in two communities. Okay?
So, ma'am, can we say prevalence rate is much more beneficial for a specific duration of time, not for the very long time?
A specific duration of time is important, but
Beneficial as well.
yes. Why? Because for prevalence, we almost all use point prevalence. For example, the prevalence right now, or prevalence, for example, at 2025. Okay? Because you want to know how many patients do you have in your current situation. Okay?
Got it. Can we calculate the prevalence of an individual by the similar method of a single individual?
No. Prevalence is a meaning for community. Why? Because you should put, for example, the number of population at the denominator. Yes? So it is not individual, it has not individual meaning. Okay? So, what is the difference between incidence and prevalence? Prevalence can be viewed as a snapshot or a slice through the population at a point in time at which we determine who has the disease and who does not. Okay?
Yes,
The numerator of prevalence includes a mix of people with different duration of disease. For example, if I want to calculate the prevalence of diabetes, it doesn't matter for me that, for example, he got diabetes, for example, from 3 years ago, and for example, the other got from 10 years ago. It is important that all of them have diabetes right now. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Please see this flask. This flask is a kind of community. Okay? Here you can see the community. It is incidence. It means the new cases of a disease. And these, the extra, the exit of disease, I mean. Yes? By death and by cure. These two have totally different meaning in the individual aspect. But for community, both of them are the same. Why? Because the number of patients would be decreased by death and by cure. Yes?
Got it.
But by incidence, the number would be increased. And it is the prevalence. If the number of incidence is higher than the number of deaths or the number of cures, the total population with that specific disease might be increased. Yes? But if deaths or cures are higher than incidence, the prevalence might be less. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
But for incidence and for prevalence, we have numerator and we have denominator. If we have some misunderstanding and miscalculation in defining numerator or denominator, the prevalence might be totally different. How? Please consider a situation in which the definition of diabetes, for example, is fasting blood sugar over 126. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And in a community of 100 population, we have, for example, 20 diabetic population with that definition. After a while, text has changed the definition, and the cut point, for example, has a different value. The value for defining diabetes is, for example, 110 right now. Although the number of diabetics are the same, but based on the new definition, the total number would be different. So, if you have any changes in definition of the patients or definition of the high-risk population, the numbers might be different. It is not true difference in the public health situation. It is just arbitrary. Why? Because of the changing in the definition of disease. Here you can see the number of people with and prevalence of dementia in the Canadian Study of Health and Aging cohort. Here you can see, based on different categorization, the prevalence might be different between 3 to 29. It is not real, it is just by different categorization. So, to compare the prevalence in different communities, the definition should be the same.
See.
Okay? And And about problems with the numerator.
Definitions, you mean the factors?
Definition by text about, for example, who are diabetics, who have dementia. You have some criteria to define a patient, yes?
Yes.
To diagnose a patient. If you use, for example, a different cut point for fasting blood glucose, and for example, you use 126 for plasma glucose to define diabetic population, to diagnose diabetic population, and in our country we use, for example, 140. So a person might be diabetic based on my diagnosis, but not diabetic based on your diagnosis.
Cut point, you mean the normal way. Cut point, you mean the normal way.
Yes, yes. Cut point is the normal range. Over normal range, it is diseased, yes?
Yes.
So if the normal range is different, based on different categorization, the definition should be different. Okay. And we should have the same definition for the numerator. If, for example, in my city, I want to calculate the prevalence of, for example, diabetes in a specific ethnicity, for example. How can we define that ethnicity, that race, based on, for example, skin color, based on language, based on what? So, if we cannot define the target population, the denominator well, the definition might be different. So, please see this example. I want a volunteer to read the question and answer the question step by step. You? Okay, please.
Prevalence survey conducted from January 1 through December 31st, 2012 identified 1,000 cases of schizophrenia. In a city of 2 million persons, the incidence rate of schizophrenia in the population was 5 upon 100,000 persons each year. What percentage of 1,000 cases were newly diagnosed in 2012?
First of all, please summarize the information that you have in the is it whiteboard?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have firstly the date is like specific, so we will take the date as it is. 1,000 cases of schizophrenia in a 2 million persons. So we have 1,000 in the 2 million persons.
Okay.
Is that right? And after that, the incidence rate of schizophrenia in this population is the incidence rate. So incidence rate is like 5 upon 100,000. What percentage of 1,000 cases were newly diagnosed? So first we will find the
what is that
incidence rate of
1,000? What is that 1,000?
1,000 is the cases, like it is the we can say
Is it newly
ratio.
diagnosed? Is it newly diagnosed?
No.
Or old, or both of them?
It is actually old. It's old.
Old.
Already
Yes.
present in the society.
Newly diagnosed and previous ones.
Yeah.
Yes?
Exactly.
So, what is this?
This is the newly.
These are newly diagnosed.
Exactly.
Okay? So,
first I guess we can find the newly present in this population.
very good. Yes?
So we will find IR of
100,000.
Sorry, yeah, that's what I mean. 100,000. So we have this, now we can calculate this.
If we have
5 upon this.
If we have 100,000 population, we have 5 newly diagnosed.
So 5 upon 100,000 if you...
Yes, agree?
Yes.
How many newly diagnosed among these 2 million?
10.
Equal to
100 total. It will be 10. It will be 100 over.
10?
100.
100? Because 1, 0, yes, and 2, yes? Are you okay?
Yeah, it will be 100.
100. It means that we know that among 100,000 population, we have 5 newly diagnosed cases. Please calculate the newly diagnosed in 2 million.
100.
It is 100. It means that among those 1,000, hundreds
Or
are new.
Incidence rate is...
It means that 900 were diagnosed by schizophrenia at the previous time. Newly are 100. What is the percentage of 100 among 1,000?
10%.
10%. Very good.
10%, exactly.
Very good. Thank you very much. Are you okay? Clap for him. Okay. We have another questions, but I think A, we can solve A, and you think about B at home, and if you have any question, we will solve it tomorrow. Because we have many lessons and we can start the next session earlier. Okay? So please think about A. Do we have any volunteer? From ladies? No? Any brave lady? Don't we have?
Option B.
Option
B.
B. Who? You? Please come here and tell about your answer.
Well, the total population is 183,000
Uh-huh.
and the total number of new cases that were calculated in the 6-month period is 26. And
Uh-huh.
the total existing along with this new is 264. So I just did to the, if the population, what I did is population is 183
Uh-huh.
and here we are looking per 1,000.
Uh-huh.
So I just saw that 14
Upon.
multiplied by 2 is 28. The new
Uh-huh.
cases are only 26, so it should apply to the population.
Very good. It means that the question is the incidence rate of active cases. Yes? Incidence means new active cases of TB between these two times is 26. The population is that. So if you divide this to that and summarize per 100,000, the number would be 14. So please calculate it at home. It is so easy and you can find it. I will ask you about B tomorrow. Okay? We will discuss about the next session for 10 minutes.